MechWarrior the Dark Ages. So, what's the deal with this game? So, this game was made by WizKids in, I think 2001 was roughly when it started, and it is from the HeroClix range of miniatures, which also included Mage Knight and of course HeroClix themselves, and they get the name because their base is Click, which we'll talk about exactly how the hell that works eventually. And yeah, so the other thing that made it stand out for me as a war game was you didn't go out and buy boxes of miniatures, you bought booster boxes. Oh, and we'll be cracking some of these bad boys over later with a couple of extra little treats, prize boxes and faction boxes and a few other little things. So yeah, so they came out with this, and this ended up pretty damn popular. I know that many people may not have heard of it before, but at the time it was super popular. They came out with some extra expansions. You got faction dice here, so different factions, and they all got their own symbol on it, so that was pretty cool. And yeah, that was basically sort of how MechWarrior the Dark Age was going, and we'll talk about more of this stuff in the gameplay section, but for now, let's jump into setting.
Accessing.
This is set in the Dark Ages, which is the third period of MechWarrior. The most popular BattleTech sort of settings is the Third Succession War and the Clan Wars, and this is after that. So what I'm going to do is just to sort of understand where the hell we're going with this one, I'm going to quickly try and sum up the Succession and Clan Wars era and a bit before that in 2 minutes. So let's whack the timer up and let's get started. Okay. So the history starts on Earth, and basically there's this cool super society called the Star League, and the Star League is really technologically advanced. The problem is the Star League starts having issues, and people take umbrage at it, and what ends up happening is one of the biggest members of the Star League just takes all his shit and leaves the galaxy. He just leaves the galaxy. He just goes off into the thing and goes, screw you guys, I want blackjack and hookers, and we're done. So then what ends up happening is that the Star League fractures and becomes a whole bunch of different factions, and succession wars start happening and become the next Star League. So it goes like 800 odd years into the future, and we're still having succession wars, and the third succession war has just started. And so these different factions are all vying for control, using mercenary groups to not directly attack each other and a whole bunch of stuff like that. And then so what ends up happening is at the end of the third succession war, it doesn't end because there was a victor, it ends because the clans show up. Who are the clans? Remember that guy who said, screw you guys, I'm leaving? Well, it turns out they're his ancestors. They've come back and they're like, okay, well, we're going to take over the inner sphere now, which is what all the houses have been hanging out in. The crazy thing is, though, is that the inner sphere, basically due to politics, their technology is kept very secret. Like, they don't share technology, and because of this, a lot of houses have forgotten how to make mechs, but they know how to maintain them, but a lot of technology needs to be carefully looked after because there's no replacement. No one knows how to make it. The clans, however, have figured out how to make new mechs and spaceships and all that kind of crap, so they come in and they just start hammering the inner sphere, and there's nothing the inner sphere can do except they figure out that the clans are way too honorable. They like to sort of sit down at a round table and have a chat about how they're going to kick each other's asses and what they get out of it. So the houses start taking advantage of that and start laying traps. And basically what ends up happening is at the end of the Clan Wars era, a whole bunch of clans have merged together, merged with houses, houses have been destroyed, clans have taken over house area, and we're left. And then what ends up happening? The Dark Ages. And so that's where we're at the moment. The Republic of the Inner Sphere have just cropped up recently, and they're starting to become a new Star League, basically, but not everyone wants to fold in line with them. In fact, several of the houses and clans really don't. So what ends up happening is that we take the role of sort of like these side clans, basically. And these side clans are all part of either main houses or clans themselves. So for example, we've got Dragon's Fury, who are part of House Karita, we've got Swordsworn, who are part of House Davian, we've got the Highlanders, who are part of the Republic, we've got the Steel Wolves, who are part of the Wolf Clan, we've got the Spirit Cats, who are part of Nova Cats, and we've got Banson's Raiders, who are just trying to do the best they can for the general population. He's kind of like Robin Hood, basically. But we'll go into more detail in the actual gameplay section, because these factions play differently from each other. They're not one for one. Just because you have a helicopter of this clan doesn't mean it matches a helicopter of this clan, and vice versa. And that's the setting that we're currently in. I know there's not much in the actual setting of Dark Ages, because it really doesn't cover much. It's mostly just sort of loose idea for you guys to start kicking the crap out of each other and going, well, my Banson's Raiders are way better than your Highlanders. That's basically what it's for. Otherwise, the setting is BattleTech, basically, but just in further in the future than most BattleTech is played at. Let's kick this pig and get stuck into gameplay. Let's kick this pig and get stuck into the rules.
Accessing.
Rules. Here's the rule book. And this is pretty thin. But don't let it fool you. There is actually quite a bit of complexity in this game. It had the reputation, particularly from BattleTech players, but also from Warhammer players, that it was an easy baby game for little baby people. But honestly, there's quite a bit of complexity in this, and yeah, I mean, I understand why BattleTech players think it's a step down, because it kind of is. It's really more fast-paced, sort of Warhammer-esque gameplay than it is, you know, serious BattleTech keeping track of every single section of your mech. Which, you know, I understand. Like, I mean, I think that's cool too. But this certainly seems like it's a step back, but it's also much faster. So, let's get stuck into having a look at these rules. So, the rules. So, pretty much how this game goes is we should probably start with game setup. It's pretty straightforward. You and your opponent decide a number of points you're going to play with. So, you know, maybe you do 100, maybe you do 200, 300, 1,000. And the way you figure that out is every mech or infantry unit has a little number on the base here that basically, yeah, you can't really get a good view, but, you know, basically it's a number, and that's how many points it's worth. So, for example, a 100-point game, you couldn't even field this guy. He's too expensive. And then you put your terrain down, which you get a set number of terrain, and each person gets to place one in order, backwards and forwards, of course. And then what ends up happening is you then place your guys down on table sides and you go at each other. And I guess that's where we're sort of at. But why bring up the points value? Well, it's important. Basically, for each 100 points, you get one action per turn. And you can pick whoever you want to give that set action to. And obviously, the more actions you have, the more things you can move each turn. And then once you finish moving it, you place an activation token next to it. And that activation token basically stays there until the end of, not this turn, but the next turn, because it's important. Which we'll cover, but first we're going to talk about the base. So here we have the base of the mech. Now it's just easy to do the base of the mech because there's extra stuff on it, but most are pretty similar to this in design philosophy. So the top number, or in the case of mechs, the top two numbers, are its attack. So the first number in the dial is how much damage it deals, so 3 on both. Then we've got the thing over here. So these symbols are what kind of attack it is. First one is energy, and the bottom one is ballistics. There's also another one, but most of them pretty much come in those kind of varieties. Close combat weapons is another one. The first number is minimum range. So on the top one it's 0, on the bottom one it's if the enemy unit's within 3, you can't shoot it. Then we have the maximum range, so 8 or 14. Most guns in MechWarrior the Dark Age are short range, so we don't go too crazy on that one. Then the number below the attack damage is our movement, so 7 on this one, so this mech can move 7 inches. Our next two numbers down the bottom here, the one on the left, this one here, is accuracy. So you roll 2d6, you add it together, and that's the number you get +9. So if you roll an 11, you get a 20. This number is his armor. This is what you need to roll to beat with your accuracy to deal damage. As you can see, his is 20, and it's got a blue square. Different squares are different special abilities, depending on where they are and what they've got. We'll discuss those abilities shortly. Then finally on a mech you have the heat gauge. When mechs do certain actions, either with certain weapons, or they decide to push it, which we'll talk about pushing it, they take heat damage. And then each thing gets worse. So as you can see, it now deals 1 less damage on its ballistic weapon because it's overheated. And then this symbol here is your mech is shut down and must spend the next turn venting in order to become back online, and you have to wait until it gets back to here. Now, when you take damage, this is where the clicks come in. When you take damage, you take a click. So for example, say this mech was to shoot itself, it deals 3 points of damage. It then clicks down 3 times. And you may have noticed these numbers have now changed. This has become a circle, which once again we'll cover. His accuracy is dropped by 1, his movement is dropped by 1, and both of his attacks have dropped by 1 as well. Once, of course, you take enough damage, once you get down to this black symbol, you are on death's door. You are probably screwed. But once you hit here, on anything, you're dead. Now you might have noticed this little symbol down here. This is just what unit type it is. So this is a mech. Then if you go here, we got the shield, which is infantry. And then of course, the vehicle. Well, the vehicle's also got a shield. And yeah, that's basically how you read the mech symbols. Now, of course, we're going to talk about each action. What can I do?
Incoming message.
Movement. Movement's pretty straightforward for everyone. It does pretty much the same thing across the board. You look at your thing, 8 inches, put it down, and you move your 8 inches. Bang, done. Base to base. So front of base to front of base. So this guy moves 7, so we move him to here. And this guy moves 10. Yep. So 10 would put him up to here. Obviously tanks. Much way out of range. Let's move him to here. 10 would put him on that one. So yeah, that's pretty much how movement works. And then of course, once you're done, they get marked with tokens. Which, as I said, we're just using the dice for this one. We'll show off how that works. For the most part, once you've marked a unit, you really don't need to worry too much about it. You know, it's either you're going to push it or you're not. Most of the time, you'll choose not to. And that's movement. Now, the only other exception to movement is this. Mechs can run. Mech can choose to run, which doubles its movement, which would be 16, which I've only got a 12-inch tape measure on hand right now. I will get out the other one. But basically, he would move up to double his distance, and then he takes a click of heat at the end of it. So there's another way to generate heat. Fun. Obviously, this can be very important if you're getting him into different positions. So do keep in mind that it is a valid option. But I think that's about it for movement. Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. Obviously, if you move into base-to-base contact, you are fighting. You are in close combat now. Which means you can only use 0 range weapons in close combat. Some close combat weapons are 0 min range, 0 max. And then, of course, you can attack from behind to get that extra bonus. We have helicopters. Helicopter, helicopter. So, what's the advantage of a helicopter? Well, with a tank, you have difficulty moving through cover, even though this is a hover tank, so it doesn't have as much difficulty. But a regular tank can. You know, moving through cover, into cover. Obviously, he gets bonuses from being in cover, but for the most part, it just stops him from moving as effectively. Hover tanks don't really meet that. They still get the best of both worlds. Obviously, with a helicopter, the great thing about a helicopter is they're fast. But if you've got a piece of terrain in the way, we'll say we've got one right here, the helicopter just goes, nah, I'm good. We will be talking about a little bit of extra movement stuff later in the rules section when we get to formations, but we'll wait for formations. Let's talk about combat, shall we? So we're just going to use the mechs because pretty much combat really boils down to a pretty straightforward thing either way. So the important thing to understand is that there's basically, in the rulebook, they'll call them white dice, which are these 2 dice, and the black dice. Obviously for these factions, they've just colored them whatever faction they are, but for the most part, that's pretty much how it goes. But you roll 3 dice on everything. And each sort of mech will have different squares that are colored. I will talk about what they do with special qualities, which we've got them here, special equipment, and we'll talk about that in a later section. So we'll just pretend that these guys have very straightforward weapons just for the tutorial. So let's take our fire starter here. So our Spirit Cat player decides, I'm gonna shoot this guy real good. So he's only got a ballistic weapon that can shoot at range, otherwise he's got a point blank flamethrower. So his ballistic weapon's min range is 3, so about here. So he's fine. His max range is 10 over here. So as you can see, it's passing straight through. So how do we hit? Well, it's pretty straightforward. You take your 3 dice, you roll them. Hiya! Thank you, Miss Piggy. And then you add this number to the number that you've got down there. So on this particular one, it's a 9. So 9 plus 9 is 18. Our defense is 20 on this guy. Oops. But that's pretty much how attack rolls work. Now let's take this guy, for example. He's going to shoot back. So this time he's shooting, he's decided he's going to shoot his laser, which is an energy weapon. So if he hits, it'll deal an additional point of heat damage. So he rolls, and what we get here is we get 10, 11, 11 plus 9 is 20, he hits. So he'll deal 3 points of damage and a click of heat. Why are these dice different colored? Well, see, these 2 dice have a special rule. So what's the special rule? You roll double ones, you miss. Doesn't matter. you miss, it goes wide. It doesn't matter if somehow this would still be a hit. Double ones on the same colored dice is bad news. On the other hand, double 6s, which in this case are shown by the Highlanders faction symbol, that's a critical hit. You deal an additional point of damage on top of whatever damage you deal. So that's how that works. Alright, so the last type of shooting that I've got to cover here is artillery, and we've got a friend from House Davion here, and artillery is pretty straightforward on how it works. You've got, basically on the thing, you've got an extra little bracket with a number next to it. That's the artillery range. That's where you can shoot up to. So this one is 20. So if you could place this token 20 inches away, we'll say onto this mech, for example. So then what happens is that once you've placed it on your guy, that guy, you then have to roll to see if you hit the target, which is pretty straightforward. You take the number on here, which is a 4, and you look at the target number, which is 17. So I roll the 3d6 as per normal, and I want to get over 17. Now in this particular case, we don't get it, it scatters, but we also have to see how far it scatters. So in this particular case, I got a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I got the lowest one. So it scatters 3 inches, according to this. So if it's right on top of this guy, we'll just go it from the top. So then I have to roll the scatter dice. So I go 2, so it goes this way, and it goes this way 3 inches, which would be pretty much harmless. Because even though it's got a 1-inch blast, it doesn't do anything. But if I hit, then what would end up happening is that would end up hitting. But the thing is with artillery is you don't just place the marker and roll the dice. You place it a turn prior. So the idea is that when I activate this guy, I place his marker. So let's just say I would like to hit this mech, but I also want to take into account, maybe I'll place it here. So now he goes, oh no, I can't move straight forward because I'll be right on top of it. So maybe he'll try and move over to here or something like that. Out of the range. And at this point, I actually want to roll badly. So this time I actually rolled incredibly well and would hit the target directly. But let's just say I screwed up and I only got like say I got the 10 like I got from last time. Then I want to roll a 2. I rolled a 3, so it goes this way, 3 inches. But if I rolled a 2, boom, straight on top, bang, hits him, and it deals the damage of the gun. Now let's talk about close combat, because this is where things get a bit spicy. So close combat is obviously when we get into close combat like this. It's exactly the same thing. You roll your dice and you add them together. That's a terrible roll. Now, the other thing is that that's not just all you can do. There's a few special actions that you can do depending on what movement you've got and sort of, yeah, where you are. So let's just say these guys start apart. It's the fire starter's turn. He declares a charge. So how does he do that? He rolls 3d6 to begin with. So he got an 8, and that's how far he can charge. So that's in range. Very much in range. And he charges in. Then he rolls his attack roll. So 3d6 once again. We'll say he hit. So on this one, what would happen is he deals his 3 points of fire damage, which would also deal 2 clicks of heat. And then he would also deal an additional point of damage for charging in. But he also takes a click of heat for running and a point of damage himself, because basically when they charge in, they crash together. Oops. But, you know, maybe that's enough to sort of push it into another bracket. Then the next one is Death from Above. Any MechWarrior fan may be aware of what this means. Death from Above is a term when you have jump jets, you jump up above the opponent and you land on them, or you attack them in some way that deals catastrophic damage. It's generally very bad. And if you've got an assault class mech landing on a light mech, it generally is a lot of damage. So what ends up happening here? Well, it's pretty straightforward. First, you roll to hit. You just move your distance and whatever your normal move distance is, and then you roll to hit. You roll your 3 dice. Oh, that was a good roll from him, finally. So he, Death from Above, so he jump jets, bang, lands on the guy. So what does this do? Well, it deals an additional 2 points of damage. Bang. Straight on the money. So that's 5 clicks of damage. That's not a small amount of damage. And then what ends up happening is that this guy then takes 1 click of damage in return and takes a point of heat for using his jump jets in such a cavalier fashion. So 5 clicks of damage, 2 points of heat because of the flamethrower, and this guy takes a point of damage and a click of heat. But I know that sounds great and all, but what happens if you miss this roll? Well, say he rolls a 3 on this one, so now he's missing. Actually, he still isn't. Oh, I know he is, because when you jump jet in, this guy gets +2 defense because of the difficulty of the maneuver. So you miss, guess what? You take 2 clicks of damage and a point of heat, and then this guy is free to do whatever he wants. You just missed him, but you still screwed up the landing. So it's a risk-reward system. And then finally, you have Ram. So we'll say this guy is now damaged beyond repair. He's on death's door, so he decides he can't attack, so he can't attack with any of his guns, so he runs in, rams in, and just like the other things, he rolls 3 dice, which that wouldn't be enough to hit because his attack would be 5 at this point. But he would run in, deal 2 points of damage to this guy, take 1 point in return. Obviously, this would be a bad news bears kind of situation, but at this point, this guy's on death's door. He's probably not going to do much more. Unless you're doing an objective-based mission, for the most part, this guy may as well suicide himself into this guy and hopefully deal some damage to him. Now, the last thing is that on both things, you may have noticed that there is this little circle that goes around the bases. Let me hold up the tank. See how he's got a full circle? This guy's got a circle, but he's also got this grey circle at the back here. So, most things, apart from a couple of tanks, have a rear and front facing. So if front facing happens, you're all good. If you shoot someone in the rear or charge them in the rear or whatever, you get +2 to your dice roll. So in this case, that would be, instead of being a 14, would be a 16, which obviously makes it a lot easier to hit things. Because 16 + 9, that's pretty much hitting most things in the game. Now, it doesn't deal any additional damage, of course, but it does make it so that it's a bit rougher. Now, you may be thinking, some smart players out there might be thinking, well, couldn't I just, say, I charge and I roll this ridiculous number that I just rolled, 16? Couldn't I just, like, and then he's going to be taking it hard. Yeah, so charge and death from above are sort of a bit of an exception to this rule, because obviously both of them can close the distance very fast. If you're trying to do a charge or a death from above, as you come in, they can, if you're coming in from the front arc, they can twist to meet your guy, because they can see him. They're keeping an eye on him. The only time you can do that without any penalty is if you come in from behind. Because they can't see you, they're not prepared for the charge to come in. But yeah, anytime someone matches two front arcs up together, this guy can twist into position for free. That's how it works. So any close combat guys, regardless of what angle they're coming in on, they can turn and face one another for free.
Shutting down.
Okay, the final main action that you can take. What is it? Venting. So you may have heard me talk about how things take heat. So what happens with the heat gauge? Well, basically it starts at green, and each time you push your mech, or you take a point of heat damage for some reason, or you run, or whatever it happens to be, your mech slowly starts overheating. Now, he can vent at any point. How do you vent? Well, there's a number just above the chart here with a V, and that's how many clicks it vents. So this one has 3, so you click it back 3 spaces back to where it is. Now, what ends up happening if you overheat? So you keep taking risks, and then you get hit by a flamethrower, and oh boy, your mech shuts down. What happens? Well, it's shut down immediately. Its defense, it's easier to hit. Anyone attacking a shutdown mech gets +4 to their attack rolls. So this means that this guy is a sitting duck. Now what happens is, well, he starts venting. So each turn he vents. But he has to wait until he gets back to green, which for this guy is only 2 turns, in order to come back online. And then he's allowed to continue being a menace on the battlefield until, of course, he shuts down a second time or a third time. Who knows? It really depends on what on what's happening with the mech at the time. And that's pretty much how heat works.
Incoming message.
Alright, so formations are pretty straightforward, and I'll show you with some infantry. But you can do this with pretty much anyone. So we've got our infantry formation here. Here it is. This is literally it. You can take up to 5 units and place them in close base with each other, and this is a formation. Just for the record, this is still, well, this wouldn't be a legal formation because they're different factions, but oh no, yeah, they're spirit cats, yeah. So this could be a formation. So how do formations work? Well, they move together, and they attack together, and they even close combat together. Now, formations don't have to be as strict as you think they are. See, at any point I could say take this guy off and move him over to here. These guys are still formation, this guy isn't. This guy isn't part of the formation anymore, but say drives around, does some loop-to-loops, you know, just is a regular dickhead on the battlefield, and then he comes back and goes, hey guys, what do you think? Was that a sweet ass trick I did? And then they can move together again, or shoot. We'll say they come across this tank here. Now, the cool thing is with this is that if you don't wish to, maybe you want to make individual attacks with each of these guys, which is fair, then you don't have to make them attack in a formation, even though they are in one. But generally, the best way to go is you take these guys and they shoot this guy. Now, what happens? Well, you get +2 for each member in the formation. So, let's say it doesn't matter who shoots, but so we get +6 on this dice roll. So that would be a 17 +7. Yeah, that's a fairly big hit, but he only takes 2 points of damage. And that's pretty much how formations work, and anyone can be part of any formation. So, you know, most of the time I found most people would put 3 units of tanks in together, or they'd put 4 or 5 infantry guys together, depending on the size. But yeah, you can take these on the move, and yes, you can even pop mechs into formations if you wish. So you can move this up, and that would be a legal formation. The other thing is that formations, there is one exception to the formation rule. Say these two mechs are duking it out. They're getting all up in each other's business, smashing up all the terrain. And these guys here go, oh, our mech is a bit damaged, so he's having a hard time hitting this guy, but he still deals good damage. So maybe what you do is you charge these guys in, and now you can say, okay, well, I got my 5-man formation here. By the way, this guy could be over here, like this. So the close combat formation doesn't need to touch. But they go, okay, well, we're going to have this guy still strike, but we're going to give him +8 to his roll now, which would definitely be a hit.
Inspection successful.
The last close combat rule that we have to take a look at involves infantry, the weakest unit in the game. But they have a special ability, and only infantry can do it. When they are in close combat with someone, they can capture an enemy unit. This can be anything: mech, tank, other infantry. So how do they do it? Well, they roll a normal close combat attack, but it's 3 more difficult than it was before. So basically -3 to the roll, or +3 to defense, whichever way you want to put it. So if I was to try and capture our little Arbalest friend here, I was like, I want you. And this guy was like, nah, I'm good. I have to roll, and that would be a complete fail. But so I'd have to roll a 7 plus, you know, the dice roll and get over a 23. Not super easy. This is where formations help. The way it works, let's just say this did work. I critically succeeded on this particular roll. So at this point, with mechs, they can't move anymore and they have to stay in base combat. So you basically lose the control of this infantry unit. But you now, like, their mech is now, it doesn't work anymore. You can't move it, they can't move it. And at the end of the game, it's worth double points, which we will get into when we get to the end of the game section. If it's other infantry or a vehicle, the vehicle moves with this infantry piece, moving, of course, the shortest distance, which will be your infantry. Unless, of course, it's a very damaged vehicle, then it may move slower than your infantry. And only one infantry can only capture 1 unit at a time. So you can't, say, capture 3 different mechs with this one guy. He has to stay with the unit. If he's in a formation, though, he can break off and do his own stuff. So that's pretty much it. That's all the combat maneuvers.
Incoming message.
Special equipment chart, which is actually a really useful chart. My dad, because I used to play with him, he had tons of these printed off the Wargaming Club. What the hell do these do? Well, this is the cool thing. Remember those little squares I was telling you about? Well, okay, so for example, let's take the front. So we've got the ballistic damage special equipment. So if your gun is a ballistic weapon, you find the color of the square, whichever that may be. Let's say we say it's red. And then you read it. So this unit ignores all defensive special equipment while making a ranged combat attack. So for example, you may remember that this guy had special armor that reduced ballistic damage by 2. Not with armor piercing, he does not. So each one of these had different things. So we had ballistic special damage, we had energy. For example, we've got flamers, which is grey, which this guy has. So pretty much whenever you hit a mech in close combat, add 1 click of damage to the normal damage value, and then a unit takes 2 additional clicks of damage. So it just deals 1 flat extra damage to mechs, and then it also deals 2 clicks of heat. That's pretty cool. We got hand-to-hand special equipment. We've got speed special equipment, like jump jets, for example, which you know, that guy had. And then we've got just you know, attack special equipment, so stuff that makes you more accurate. Defense, of course. And then we've got ballistic heat effects and energy heat effects and speed heat effects. So when you spin the heat dial, it may have different things. So it starts on all green, for example, which for each one of them, well, it's just the starting position. But so for example, if you ever get a red square on the ballistics heat thing, it means If this mech is not shut down, roll 6-sided dice on 1, 2, or 3. The ammo explodes and it takes an additional point of damage. Sorry, and it takes damage equal to its ballistic damage value, so 3, plus 1. And then bang, it just explodes. Or you have an ammunition jam, which it means you can't shoot with it until you get your heat back up. So yeah, sometimes heat can be really dangerous, and basically this covers all of the special sort of little things.
Incoming message.
Our final little thing is the big thing that changes all wargaming: terrain. So, terrain, how does it work in MechWarrior? Well, basically it comes in really 3 varieties. The first one is, of course, clear. So, this table would be clear. Then we have hindering terrain. So, hindering terrain would be like a forest. So, hindering terrain makes it so that you... some units can't move through hindering terrain, like hover units. While the units can move through hindering terrain fine, it does shorten your movement by half, I believe. And then it also, if you're shooting into it, it's -1 to hit, so +1 defense basically. So it's a little bit harder to nail someone who's in hindering terrain. Then we have blocking terrain. Blocking terrain's pretty easy. It's a big bit of terrain that you can't see through. No one can see through it. It's blocking. There is a specific kind of blocking terrain called low walls that block vehicles and infantry, but do not block mechs from walking over it or shooting past it. And also the mechs can also shoot over low walls and hit infantry behind it, while infantry cannot do the same thing. And then we also, of course, as the important one, we have lakes, ponds, rivers, etc., water terrain. These are important because pretty much what happens is that unless you're a hover vehicle, you can't move through it, or if you're a mech, you can walk into the terrain and immediately reduce the heat of your mech by 1 or 2, depending on whether or not it's shallow or deep water. Other units can move through shallow water with penalties, but deep water, pretty much only mechs and hover vehicles can enter. And that's pretty much how terrain works in this game.
Task complete.
So the game's over. So what happens then? How does the game end? Well, if you table the enemy, so they've got no more units left, or maybe there's a set number of turns, you decide to play for 4 turns. That wouldn't be very long in MechWarrior, but let's say you decide to play 20 turns. Or maybe you've decided that you're just both done and you just want to continue, like, move on with life. Maybe both of you only have damaged mechs and that's it. Well, how do you win? Okay, so category 1. There's 3 categories to winning the game. So the first one is what have you destroyed? Everything that you've destroyed you get the points value for. Pretty straightforward on that one, nothing too crazy. If you've captured something, you get double the amount of points for it. So that's pretty cool. And then the third thing is if you've gotten into your enemy's deployment zone. Basically the idea is that you're in there wrecking up their supplies and hurting their ability to do war. So then you get equal points to the units that you got into the back line. And then you add all that up, and whoever's got the most points at the end of the game is the winner. Yeah! And that's MechWarrior.
Incoming message.
So, gameplay. How's this gameplay? It's actually really fun. I really think that it got a bit of the short end of the stick. That being said, it was still very popular. It was a lot of fun. The gameplay is just complex enough that you can't just turn your brain off completely, but also not so complex that you can't just pick a game up and get it moving. And really, the way you added complexity to this game is you increase the points value. You know, if you wanted to have a nice, simple, quick game that took like 20 minutes, you play 100 points. If you wanted to play a game that took like 4 hours, you play like 2,000 points. I've never actually seen a game played at that size, but that's because most of the people at the gaming club like to cycle through. So generally it's 300 to 500 points at that club. and that took somewhere between an hour to an hour and a half, depending on sort of how in-depth people were at sort of getting it. So really the complexity came from how you set the table up and what mission you were going to play, right? Very much like Warhammer. It very much, to me, at the time, felt like they were trying to make a more sort of beginner-friendly Warhammer with a MechWarrior theme, which makes sense. So the other thing about gameplay is that each faction actually is different from each other. So we're just going to talk about the 6 original factions. There are additional factions. Republic of the Sphere got introduced relatively early. Then we had some of the more famous factions like House Carita, House Davion, Federated Sons, with the... I don't think the Draconis Combine ever got introduced, but I think they're gone by this point, basically. Dragon's Fury is kind of their semi-replacement. House Liao, though, we've got, and, some of the big clans. Clans Novacat, Clan Jade Fox, and stuff like that. So they're all sort of related. So I'm just going to quickly talk about each sort of clan, not really in great details as far as lore goes, but more about how each one of them functioned rather than sort of how each one of them sort of worked. So Dragon's Fury is probably the most sort of baseline clan. They tended to not excel at anything, but they also didn't really have any massive penalties, which is just, like, that by itself is actually really solid, which is really nice. So they didn't excel at anything, but they didn't suck at anything either, which was great. They're also just a really fun faction to play, because they've got really cool color theming and stuff like that. Most people I knew played Dragon's Fury, so yeah, they were cool. Sword Sworn, which was my faction for a long time, they're the attack guys. So they burn bright, but they burn hard. So their heat gauge was complete garbage, but they hit like trucks when they actually got in. The problem is getting them in and then having a decent amount of heat. Also, they weren't like super duper accurate. They were sort of like they were fairly their attack rolls were low, but when they hit, they hurt a lot. But they had bad heat to make up for that. Highlanders, their speciality was close combat and artillery. When artillery came out, it was mostly close combat to begin with, because artillery didn't come out until the second set. But that was pretty quick after the first set, so there really wasn't much of a time period where there was no artillery. But yeah, so Highlanders had the best artillery in the game, and they also really liked close combat, but their shooting was a bit and other than that, they were just fairly regular. Like, they did a lot of damage in close combat. That was their goal. Steel Wolves. Steel Wolves was another one of those factions where they didn't really super excel at anything. They had better than average defense from what I remember. So they generally just had bulkier mechs. I think if I remember, their heat gauge was also really good from memory. So I think if I'm remembering correctly, they were also like just slightly more expensive, but slightly better. So that's how they kind of made up their thing. Is they were just sort of a bit better, a bit bulkier, good heat, but they were more expensive to field, so you got less of them. And they also really didn't do artillery very much. They were quite artillery poor. I think they had like 2 kinds of artillery comparatively to most other factions, 4 or 5. So yeah, Spirit Cats. Spirit Cats had reasonably good defense, good attack, but didn't deal huge amounts of damage. That was sort of their trade-off, but they fairly regularly hit, and they were also a bit more difficult to hit as well. Not quite as much as Steel Wolves, but yeah, so they just didn't deal that much damage. And they also, I think if I remember correctly, their speed. So that's right. They had good speed, good accuracy, but they were sort of average on defense, and they didn't do a lot of damage either. But the Spirit Cats was actually fairly popular because they just managed to get really good positional gain. They didn't have a crap ton of heavy mechs to pick from. That was their big drawback. But the heavy mechs they did have were the good heavy mechs, so it really didn't matter too much about that. And then we have Banson's Raiders. So these are the guys that are like the Robin Hood faction. They don't really have any massive sort of, connection to any of the houses or anything like that. They suck. Sorry, they do. We had two guys in the club who played Banson Raiders. Both of them stopped playing Banson's Raiders. What is Banson's Raiders' big thing? They field a lot of guys. That's legitimately their thing. They have a lot of really crap units. They have a lot of construction mechs, which, honestly, a lot of time, construction mechs were kind of like the unit that's like, you play a draft game and you draw a construction mech and you're like, well, need to make up that extra 60 points somewhere. So you put it on the table. But Banson's Raiders, pretty much, that was their bread and butter. They would generally, like, say you played a regular game, and say, like, each side had normally had about 3 mechs. Banson's could have, like, 5 or 6 mechs, along with all their infantry and tanks. But, and even when they had mechs, like, so say they got this guy, right? He would be crapper, though, than this guy. They did kind of make up for it. They had really good special characters, but not good enough, really. So yeah, Banson's Raiders just sort of fell behind in the curve, in my personal opinion. Most of the time, it just took additional steps for your opponent to kill you. But at the end of the day, they killed you eventually. But yeah, so, okay, Vamps, you say the game's fun, it's good. Why isn't it still being played then? Well, funny you should mention that. So, there are downsides to this. Number one, I think big misstep number one is that they got too focused on trying to add more complexity into the game. They got pilot cards and little special upgrades that you could insert into the side of mech bases. And it just ended up trying too hard to add a complexity into the game that I just feel like the game didn't need. They should have just focused on introducing more factions and maybe spicing up some of the back-end sort of situations. Maybe more special equipment and stuff like that. But what they ended up doing is they ended up adding pilot cards, and they did end up adding some special equipment, but what ended up happening is you went from a game where you had this guy and this guy fight each other, and you had this guy and he had a special slot on your board that would have all these pilot cards and everything, and then he had like a little sort of like slot here that you could put up to 2 additional guns and stuff onto him with. So it just ended up trying to be more like BattleTech, but the problem is that we have BattleTech for that. We didn't need more complicated mechanics. We needed to make these mechanics better. Speaking of which, the miniature quality. Now, overall, not too bad. Mechs, tanks, infantry, that's fine. It's this thing. Yeah, the click base. Dear God, were these things inconsistent. So, mechs generally weren't too bad, but occasionally you'd find a mech that would you'd just be sitting there going like, and you'd click one space because it was just so jammed on. Generally, though, if you clicked it enough, you would get a relatively nice rotating mech base. So the mechs were fine. You would have a similar problems with this though. Some of the heat gauge is really good. Other ones you just couldn't get the twist. And the problem with this thing is you cannot get good leverage on it. If it's not twisting, it's not twisting. I knew a guy who carried around a pair of pliers for a couple of his mech bases because they just would not twist, as in the heat gauge. Now, as I said, the mechs had their issues, but here are the big ones. infantry, and vehicles. So they fixed infantry eventually, sort of. So, like, this is me putting pressure on. And there we go, I finally got him to turn. And one of the big problems you'd always find is that these infantry ones would get stuck in between the numbers, or they'd click twice when you only want them to click once. So yeah, but what they ended up doing is that I don't actually have a copy of it on me, but they released these rings. So you wore them on your hand, and they had like this little sort of like thing that clicked into the bottom of the base, and then you twisted that, and it twisted super easy. In theory, sometimes it didn't, but that was the idea. They sort of fixed them, but the problem was they didn't fix these guys. So then we had the problem of how the hell do we twist this? Now, a lot of the time what you do is you could just get a good angle on them and sort of put pressure on it with your nail in the little grooves, and that would make it click. Now I just want to prove something to you. Yeah. See how that's like, let's see if I can get it to sort of, but you can probably see that it's sort of like half in between on there. So now I have to try and click it back. I can't get it. So I know that I'm actually going to leave this full little bit in. Why am I going to leave it in? Because you can understand how annoying this is when you've just shot something, you want to take another action, but your opponent is trying to frickin' frizzle frazzle with this piece of dazzle, and it's just not twisting. Now imagine before the rings how a pain in the ass it was when something got hit with an artillery strike and all three of your infantry units got damaged. There you go. It's hard. I personally think that, you know, I said it took an hour and a half. I think you cut that time in half if you could spin these goddamn bases. I think that was the major killer for this game. Not the complexity, which I do think they went overboard with. Not any rules issues, because the rules were very straightforward and just complicated enough that they were good. It's these goddamn bases, man. It's the reason I gave up MechWarrior. I'm not even joking. I remember one day I was sitting there playing a tournament and I was losing the game, which, fine, you know, even though for a 13-year-old maybe not, you know. But I was losing the game and I could not get one of these bases to twist. I'd also recently taken up Warhammer and a couple of other war games and some card games. And basically I was sitting there and I'm like, I hate this. And anyway, I looked at my opponent and he was like, what's up? And I'm like, I can't get this tank base. I just can't twist it. It's not working. And then someone came over with a fucking butter knife. Sorry. But someone came over with a freaking butter knife and gave it to me. And that got me to twist my base enough. And then he shot it again with a different unit. And I had to try and do the whole entire thing again. And so I looked at him and I'm like, I forfeit. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I give up. I forfeit this game. I'm going to go play Warhammer. And he's like, but what? And he even said to me, he's like, but you're not that far behind. And it was true. I could have easily turned the game around with a couple of good moves and maybe a couple lucky dice rolls. I couldn't do it anymore. So if you're wondering why MechWarrior and HeroClix themselves aren't really done anymore, it's mostly because these clicks are shithouse. Oh, it's not even that. It's like some units are fine. I'll see if I... let's see if I can... Yeah, okay, well, this guy. This tank. It clicks super duper easy. Alright, maybe not super duper easy, but it clicks a lot easier than the other guy. I can actually get it into position. So some of them were fine. Like these infantry actually aren't too bad. Honestly, I can twist them quite easy without the ring. But dear God, they were just inconsistent. You know, you get the same 4 infantry units. Oh, this is perfect. You get the same 4 infantry. You saw how easy I was clicking that guy. I was just like, yeah, I'm just clicking him. I need the ring for this. I cannot twist this guy. Oh, I know, I got him. I got him. I mean, when I say I got him, I mean it moved, but it's still actually stuck on the first part of the dial. Yeah, gameplay, fun. Actually, rotating bases, in theory, sounds great. It's shit. Alright, so that's BattleTech in a nutshell. Thanks for joining me, guys. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, drop me a like, subscribe so I know I'm doing a decent job. Anyway, I'm going to leave you to it. Home is the regiment across the sea of stars.
We stand with brothers at our sides to pay the price and die the blood of comrades Christ to us. Long after glory's past, home is the regiment, our family and our own.
Oh boy, we got quite a bit of boosters to open here. So we got some boosters here, we got some big mech boxes here. But the thing that I think I'm most excited about to show off are these. These are prize boxes, guys. This is what you get if you win a tournament. These have not been opened. See, my dad was the MechWarrior guy back in the day. In fact, that's how people knew him at the club. So he did everything for MechWarrior. He ran the tournaments, he bought the stuff and sold them. And he also gave out prizes when the tournaments popped up. Now, in the back half of MechWarrior's lifespan, it was not very popular. So my dad ended up with tons of these. Like, I got like 30 or 40 of these prize boxes of each of them alone. So, yeah, anyway, we're going to crack them open and, you know, maybe I might give them away to some lucky viewers. Ooh, but you have to comment and like and be a subscriber. And then I'll maybe send some of these boxes out somewhere. Anyway, let's crack them open. We'll save these prize boxes for last because I think they'll be the most entertaining. Let's get stuck into the other. Alright. Firepower booster box number 1. Okay. Oh. Hey, we got some artillery here. Awesome. That means I can show these. I can show off the artillery section in the video with this. Yeah, so as you can see, we've got our cards here that basically gave ability upgrades, and we got a pilot here. So basically, these cost points and upgraded certain weapons depending on what they were. I really think this is the death of MechWarrior, the Dark Age or Age of Destruction, as they got like a second release where they called it Age of Destruction. That's when these cards came out. I just don't think it's particularly. They didn't add much, and they were just big pain in the ass to deal with. Here's our tank. We've got a Republic of the Sphere, a Tokugawa heavy tank. So let's have a look at this guy. Okay, so he's got a circle here, which means he's got a one-time special ability. And he's got green armor. Not too bad, honestly, actually. 12-inch range, yeah. I'll take that. Then we have our artillery infantry here. Toad Thunder Launcher. So here we go. And this is where these come in. Which, by this point, you'll have seen the explanation in the video, but I'll be using this guy in the video. Because, I mean, I've got him right here. So, yeah, so both those go with him. Then we've got our Elite Infantry for Republic of the Sphere. Yeah, not too bad. And then we finally got our mech here. Well, he doesn't look too bad, does he? So, oh, this is a special character, guys. 9-Ball Nova Cat. So he is, I think that's House Karita, I believe that symbol is. So he's House Karita. Oh, this guy's not too shabby. 202 points. He's a Nova Cat. So I think they're a heavy mech. Might be wrong. I'm pretty sure they are. They're a heavy mech. They're on the low end of heavy. Alright, cool. And that's what we got from our first booster. Okay. So you always get 2 infantry, a tank, and a mech. There's a tank. Here comes our mech. Whoa! No, we got a yeah, so they also brought faction pride into it, which basically just means you got like extra stuff for having just House Karita. Oh, we got another Thunder. This one's slightly different. I think it's a different faction. Yeah, so the other one was Jade Falcon. This is Republic of the Sphere. So, but same thing. Looks like it only comes with one targeter. Well, I mean, there could be another one in there, maybe. Nope. Let's have a look at our second infantry. Ah, here we go. We got some battle armor. Only battle armor for Dragon's Fury. These guys aren't too bad. So that's not too bad. And then we've got our mech. Here, we've got a Goshawk, which I believe is a light mech. And it's from Highlanders. Hey, look, I got it. Awesome. There we go, guys. I got to show off a Highlanders one. Oh, that's not too bad. That's a rare. Well, not a rare, but it's like an uncommon. These chevrons down the bottom here are what rarity they are. So 1 is common, 2 is uncommon, 3 I guess is rare, and then a star is like super rare basically. We've got a Shamash reconnaissance vehicle in Republic of the Sphere. So bang, that's it's so far not too bad, not terrible. I've got some decent mechs. I'd love to pull an assault class mech. 1, 2, 3, and number 4. Oh, another Goshawk. Dragon. Oh no, that might be Republic of the Sphere actually. Well, I got a Highlanders faction pride. There you go. So yeah, basically they just made it so that if you took all of one faction, you get extra bonuses. Okay, so we'll start with the mech this time. Yeah, another Goshawk, Dragon's Fury. So I was actually correct on my first one. Nothing too crazy there. Then we got this tank. Oh, this is on it. This is Steiner. Another Shemesh, but a Steiner one instead. And then we got another Thunder Artillery. Jeez. And we've just got some Elite Infantry. Yeah. So I know they're called Elite Infantry, but these guys are basically the basic bitch of most of the things. You know, you put these guys in if you had nothing else to do. This is basically just like you got a bunch of like mercenaries. This is the light class mech. I do have a couple more of these. I think I got one of each. So yeah, let's have a look. Here I have sharp bloody nails. Thank you, genetics. They're very annoying, to be honest. Alright, let's pull this bad boy out. Whoa, okay. Cool. So here's our mechs. So these are all specialty mechs. So here comes the stack of cards we got with them. Pretty decently thick. So these are pilot cards for these guys because they're all unique mechs. They're all stars. And these are all the cards for the pilots that go with them. So they add bonuses. You may notice, actually, if this guy's not really that firmly in, which he isn't, I might show you this little thing. So, see on this mech right here? See how he's got like these little slots? That's where you put these little, they've got like little tabs at the end here. See these things? They pop out and they fit in there, and that's what pilot boosts you get to the mech. So, yeah, so that's pretty straightforward. So obviously these are all light mechs, which means they're not too expensive. They're specialty mechs though, so they'll probably be pretty decent. And yeah, so we've got all of them here. And yeah, so we've got our we've got a Solitaire, we've got a Vixen, we've got a Spider, we've got a Hellion, We got a Roku Bee. We got a Koshi. Sorry, that'd be a Koshi. No, sorry. Cadaver. And well, that'd be Nox, actually. It's spelled NYX, but it's actually pronounced Nox. We've got our rulebook here with tokens. Let's have a look. I have no idea what these are. As I said, the rules got a bit more complicated as I went along. But we've got some tokens here, and we've got our rulebook. So this is the rules of competition. As far as I can tell, outside of having extra rules for pilots, the rules look to be pretty much exactly the same, in fact. They've got a few new colors that they added to the thing, but otherwise, yeah, it is legitimately pretty much exactly the same. And then we've got our nice map here. So, I just wait, you know what? I'll move this out of the way, and look at this. It's pretty decent, actually. I might end up stealing this. Oh, it's hex based. That is a bit weird. So you could use this for BattleTech, actually, because it's hex based. Yeah. Interesting little thing. You can actually get. You can pull these guys off the base and put them on hex bases. Some people have actually made converters, because these are really cheap if you know where you're looking for them. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, so that's pretty much that one, which I think I'm just going to put away now. I'll skip out the part where I put it away, though. Alright, let's do the next Solaris. 7? Why did I say Solaris 5 earlier? It's obviously 7. It's Roman numerals. This is heavy mechs. These are the big, chunky boys. I'm still going to open this because you can't really get a good view at what chunky boys we got in here. They're not the chunkiest of boys, just for the record. The chunkiest of boys are assault class mechs. But I just grabbed 2 of these out at random. Got our big mech box now. Off with the side we go. Okay. And here we go. Bang. So we've got another piece of the map here. More cards, another rulebook with tokens, but let's get into the real meat here. Let's have a look at what we've got here. Alright, so we've got a catapult. I already knew that one. We got a warwolf. Ooh, that's a nice one. We've got a rifleman. Yeah, I'm very partial to a rifleman, I have to admit. Don't know why. We've got a mortis. We've got a cave lion, and we've got a... Whoa. Neanderthal, is that? Yes, a Neanderthal, sorry. Turns out that word's really hard to pass when it's upside down. Great, so that's what we've got here. So these are the big chunky boys. These guys are worth like 200 odd points each, which, you know, if you played like 500 point games, which is generally what our club played, you know, these dudes take up half your points cost automatically. If you take something like a big heavy like assault mech, you're looking at like over half your points value in one mech. So you didn't always want to take chunksters, basically. Next one, we've got Champions Volume 1, the Action Pack. Now, this is actually an older one. I'm pretty sure this is before... Oh, no! I am a lying piece of shit, guys. This is actually one of the last ones. This was a 2006... Oh, this is a team that won the 2006 championships of MechWarrior the Dark Age. They said start preparing for 2007. Sorry guys, sorry the dudes from 2006 who won this. You were the last guys. Let's crack this bad boy open and see how we go. Off you go. All right, here we go. I will say I don't mind these battle map sort of things. I may actually end up stealing these because these ones in particular are quite nice actually. They don't have the hexes on them, which means they actually match the game they were made for instead of being some type of weird BattleTech sort of thing. Well, we've got a little advertisement in there, but there's a pilot card behind it. So let's have a look at what we got here. Boom. Alright. So we got this. Well, this is a locust. So scrub locust. Then we got a mortis here. We got a ghost, and I think that is a Jupiter. Is that a Jupiter? Yeah. So Jupiter, ghost, mortis, and a locust. Sorry, locust should stand out to a lot of MechWarrior fans. It is the bottom basement garbage mech that almost every team had at some point. If you read some of the MechWarrior novels, locusts actually, they tend to get a real big glow up in the novels I've found personally. They tend to sort of not suck complete ass, but in the games and in this, yeah, not so much, sadly. Finally, we have this one. This is a House Davian action pack. So what have we got here? We got 6 mechs. Ooh, 4 assault class mechs and 2 mediums. So these, there's actually a few of these. I think I actually do have another one of a different house. I think it might be House Corrido or something like that. Which is cool because they have these sort of like Japanese themed mechs. I really like them. But anyway, this box has seen better days. As I said, this is old by this point though. Like, I'm surprised it's even holding on at this point. Look, that one just opened. Alright, so there shouldn't be any maps or anything in here. Here's the pilot cards. Ah, yes, I reckon this one has been opened. So, yeah, pilots. Let's get into the mech, shall we? So let's have a look at what we got here. Oh, yeah, so this is this one and this one, they're the chunkiest of boys. These are the Atlases. Atlases are goddamn terrifying. I had a Swordsworn Atlas back in the day, and it just wrecked everything. Problem is that it overheated very quickly because that was Swordsworn in a nutshell, basically. And then we've got our Templars here, so 2 Templars, and we've got 2 Enforcers. So they're all, I think the Templars are the other assault mechs. I think the Enforcers are the lighter mechs. So yeah, that's House Davion's pack for you. As I said, I'm not really going to remove them because, look, here you go, you can see them. Like, I'll just sort of keep them aside for now. If I ever decide that I'm going to start playing BattleTech, that's when I'll start looking at getting these guys sort of situated. Alright, so these, from memory, have 1 mech in them each. I think they are slightly different, so we've got a level 4 prize, a level 5 prize, and 2 level 6 prizes. So let's start at level 4. Okay, so we've got our Falcon's Prey, level 4. Ah, okay, cool. These are the older ones. Alright, so I get to show off something, a little extra. Alright, so what have we got here? So we got Maria Devalis, so bang, like an actual fully named character here. Maria Devalis in a Shadowhawk for Spirit Cats. So there we go. But here's the real cool thing, and so all special pilots used to come with this really nifty thing. The dossier. And basically this would tell you who they were and what they did. So see? Their mech. This is how you got the additional story from the game. And then it had a commentary from like their commanding officer. It's so cool. Like, these were really awesome. The only downside with them is that generally, if you played this game a lot, you ended up with hundreds of these. We had a whole entire big, like, underbed tub that was just full of these dossiers. Because the other thing is that while they are really cool, they really do not matter. Like, This is all you need to play with Maria. You do not need this. Oh, this was for someone, actually. It's got a sticker on the front with a name. Guessing they never came and picked it up. That's a blast from the past. I haven't seen that name in a while. I can remember the guy. Alright, so we got here, we've got C. Schiller. C. Schiller? And he's in a griffin. Yeah, that makes sense. That does look a lot like a griffin, so... oh, he's dead already. Let's have a look at his stats just quickly. Yeah, so that's pretty good for a medium mech of that size. Yeah, so, I mean, he's almost like heavy mech cost. So, yeah, alright, so that's C. Schiller. Okay. No dossier on this one. Just a nice, cool gold base. So we've got an Esperanta a Loki. So that's the mech. The mech is a Loki. The arms are a bit wonky. There we go. That's more what you'd be looking at. Alright, cool. So there we go. I like the base. It's a nice gold color. So I'm assuming this was first prize probably. So you would have gotten one of these. And then we've got our Age of Destruction one. We've got Prowler Ursa. So Prowler is the name of the special mech. It's not even on the right thing. Ugh. So these are the worst ones, guys. These are mechs that have vehicle base twisters. Yeah. So, oh no, that is the top. It doesn't have a marker on it. What the hell? Normally these things have like a little arrow that tells you that you're at the first one. Like, see this guy? Let's see if I can... Yeah, see how he's got like this little black arrow here? That means that that's his starting point. Oh no, sorry, this green arrow is the starting point. My apologies. So see, he's got a little green arrow. That means it's the starting point. This specialized guy does not have one. So that's all the booster boxes we've got for today. I opened quite a few. You know, we got some prize boxes. We got some of the big sort of specialty boxes, and we got some regular mechs out of it as well. And I also got a Highlander, so that's it's good. Not that I'll still use the stock photo. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the booster opening section. Now, if you have stayed this long, thank you so much. If you've only come for the booster opening section, thank you so much as well. I do appreciate it. And yeah, let me know if anyone's interested in winning some of these. Drop a comment. And if there's enough of an interest, I'll give away some of the prize boxes. Particularly if they are the same. If they're all the same, who gives a crap, right? I don't need 20 freaking Marias. Well, actually, it's more than that. It's more like 30 or 40 Marias. So I'm more than happy to send them off. Hopefully they'll get some love somewhere on the battlefield. Yeah, so thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one. See yous.